In this video, we're going to take a brief look at some of the menus and toolbars that are available to you inside the Visual Studio IDE. Now, the first thing to point out about the menus that you see at the top of the IDE here is that contextually the menus will change based on what you're doing in the IDE. So for example, right now I have one of the items in the Solution Explorer selected, form1.cs. If I select the form itself, watch up in this area here as a new menu will pop in, the Format menu. And the Format menu's job, or set of capabilities I should say, is for doing things like alignment and resizing and centering of the various GUI controls that you put on your form. But that will only appear when you're in design mode and you have a particular form that's already selected in the design area. So you will see various menus come in and out based on context. Now, just briefly overviewing the purpose of each of these menus, of course the File menu is typically where you're going to go anytime you need to save something, open something, create something new, such as a new project. The Edit menu is your typical edit menu for things like cut, copy, paste, etc. The View menu is important because it gives you access to a lot of different areas within the IDE. So for example, you see all the way down at the bottom of the View menu here, Properties window. If you were to accidentally close the Properties window, which I just did, you can always bring it back by just selecting it from the View menu. So let me go ahead and do that, and there it is once again. Also, you'll notice there's an Other Windows category with a whole bunch of additional windows that you may want to take advantage of as you become more familiar with the IDE. The main ones that you typically need most are shown in the main View menu. In addition, you'll see this Toolbars option, and you can see based on this that only 2 of the toolbars are currently displayed, but there are many additional toolbars. You can select any one of them from this list to make that toolbar appear at the top of the IDE. So for example, let's just say you want the web browser controls. You can click that, and now the web browser controls have popped onto the toolbar here. And by the way, these toolbars are movable, so if you want to reorganize them a little bit differently, I just move the web browser toolbar down here. And similarly, if you right click in a gray area to the right of any toolbar, you can also access the list of toolbars from here and display or hide various toolbars. So I'll go ahead and hide the web browser one now as well. The Project menu is going to give you access to a bunch of commands for manipulating the currently displayed project. The Build menu is where you'll go to do things like compile your code. That's what we call building the solution. You can tell a solution to rebuild. If you clean a solution, what that's going to do is delete all of the compiled code from your project so that you can recompile it from scratch. And one of the things I've found over the many years I've been using Visual Studio is that once in a while those files, those compiled files, can get corrupted. So sometimes if you're getting a very strange problem in a program, what you want to do is just clean the solution and build it again from scratch, and that sometimes will solve some of those strange issues. The Debug menu is what you'll use for debugging your code, and you'll see things like step into and step over, which are debugger commands for helping you walk through your code, and a bunch of other capabilities for debugging as well. The Team menu is just going to give you access to a Team Foundation server. Again, if you're working in a big development team, it's not uncommon for a big company to have a Team Foundation server for managing source code in lots of applications or big applications and managing collaboration between developers as well. The Tools menu has a number of different tools in it, and in particular, one of the other things you can do with this menu is choose toolbox items. Choose toolbox items allows you to customize what shows up here in the toolbox, and here you see all the different Windows Forms controls broken down into various categories that you can use inside of a Windows Forms app. The reason you might want to, for example, use choose toolbox items is if you purchased some third-party Windows Forms GUI component that you wanted to then add into the toolbox so that you can easily drag it and drop it onto the design area. And there's a number of other tools in here that are beyond the scope of these lessons. There's also a test menu. Visual Studio has built into it capabilities for so-called test-driven development. We don't cover that as part of these videos, but there's plenty of information about test-driven development online, and one of the things you can do is create automated testing for your app using the capabilities from this menu. The window menu is going to allow you to manipulate the various windows in the IDE. One of the most important pieces in this menu is reset window layout. If you ever get your windows to a point where you can't find things anymore or they're not where you want them to be, you can always reset the window layout back to what it was originally and then take it from there. And then finally, you have the help menu with all sorts of help options. A couple of the key options here are the view help item, which just takes you directly to the online help documentation, and you can use the search engine through the documentation to find things. You also have access to the Microsoft Developer Network forums directly from here. And of course, if you ever have problems like finding a bug in the IDE, you can report that from here as well. So that's just a brief overview of the different menus that you have inside of the IDE. Now, as far as the toolbars are concerned, again, if I right-click in this gray area here, you can see that currently the layout toolbar and the standard toolbar are displayed. The standard toolbar is the piece that is showing up at the left side here, and the formatting toolbar is currently all grayed out icons because I don't have a bunch of different components selected for which I can do things like align the centers of those components. Notice, by the way, if you hover over any icon, it gives you a little tooltip that tells you the purpose of that icon, which is a handy way to learn about various features within the IDE. So again, you have a couple of toolbars displayed by default. This toolbar here has the capabilities you need for things like creating a new project, opening files, saving the files that you have open in the IDE at the moment, undo and redo commands, and then information that has to do with debugging your app. Or as you can see, if I click on this little menu here, there's options for debug and release. When you're in the process of developing apps, you're typically going to do so with debug selected here. But when you get to the point of finishing an app and getting it ready for distribution, then you would switch to the release mode. And that's also going to help perform various compiler optimizations to make your code as efficient as possible as well.